Uh, Thank you. Okay, we'll talk about the waiting for the Messiah in Sefed. In 1496, the doorpost above the entrance to the ancient synagogue in Meron began to crumble, and several small stones began to fall from it. In the neighboring town of Sefed, people reacted to this rumor with great excitement. The tradition there was that the day on which the doorpost will fall would be the day when the Messiah would come. The incident occurred only for 4 years after the expulsion of Jews from Spain, and the connection between these events is so coincidence. The expulsion of Jews from Spain is closely connected with the messianic expectations of the Jews of Sefed. The dramatic events of the expulsions of Jews from Spain in 1492 and Portugal in 1497 are considered to be among the worst disasters in Jewish history, although many Jews consider them to be a harbinger of the approaching redemption. However, this is a dispute with the academic literature as to the extent to which the expulsion had an impact on the messianic atmosphere. Gershom Shulem conclude that the expulsion had a formative influence on the messianic Kabbalah movement in the 16th century, but Moshe Eyal claims that Messianism was not new in Spain, and it had only a slight impact in the post-expulsion generation. He argues that if there had been a clear connection, we would have noticed the impact of the outburst of Messianism in the other lands of the Spanish diaspora too. Moreover, in Eyal's opinion, the known Kabbalistic groups, especially those operating in Sefed, were of the second and third generation following the expulsion, so that this traumatic experience might not have necessarily had an effect on their world. In any event, there is no dispute as to very fact of the messianic awakening. Concrete examples of this can be seen in the testimonies documented from the dark cellars of the Spanish Inquisition, calculating the end of days, for example, that of Rabbi Yitzhak Abarbanel, relating to the year 1503, and Rabbi Eliyahu Kapsali, relating to the year of 1490. In the literature, for example, the books Kaf Haktoret, Sefer HaMeshiv, and Sefer HaKaneh, whose authors are unknown, deal with the end of days. And also in the appearance of prophets and messianics, such as David Reuveni and Shlomo Molcho. Molcho tried to meet with the Pope and persuade him to convert to Judaism, and was eventually put to death in 1532. And Reuveni declared himself to be the messenger of the 10 tribes. Rabbi Yosef Diterani, Hamarit, one of the greatest sages sages of the Ottoman Empire in the first half of the 17th century wrote in the foreword to his book Tzufnat Pa'aneach. Not until the light of the Torah in Castile, it means namely Spain, faded due of the wrath of the expulsion that occurred in the year of Mizrei Israeli Kabtzenu. Did the light of Torah glow in the lands of the West and in the land of Egypt and in Eretz Tzvi, it means like the beautiful land, and through the kingdom of Togarma. In other words, the expulsion of Jews from Spain contributed to the dissemination of the spiritual world and that of a Sephardic study across the entire Jewish world, where the expulsions were taken in North Africa, the lands of the West, in Egypt, in the land of Israel, Eretz Tzvi, and through the empire, the kingdom of Togarma. The expulsion occurred in the year of Mizrei Israeli Kabtzenu. This is a saying from the prophecy of comforting, which means that he who scattered the people of Israel, in other words, God, will be the one of gather them back together. The word Mezareh was stressed to hint of the year in a gematria, that means assigning a numerical value to a name. It has a value of 252. The Hebrew year of 5,252 is equivalent to the year of 1492 in the Christian calendar. An important statement lies beneath this commentary. The expulsion of Jews from Spain is an event heralding the beginning of the ring of exiles and the return to the land of Israel, namely the start of the redemption. In other words, the expulsion of Jews from Spain is a terrible occurrence with negative implications in the short term, but in the long term, it beholds the promise of a great positive message. And indeed, later on he writes, and in the Galilee they used to say, let us be thankful to the kings of Spain who expelled our elders and prophets and came here, restoring our former glory. When Rabbi Yosef Literani writes, and in the Galilee they used to say, he is referring to Seifed. He was born in Seifed. His father was one of the most important poskim, halachic scholars, during the golden era of Seifed, Rabbi Moshe Literani, Hamabit. He is clearly reflecting that what he heard at home, apparently as a young boy, and it is an incredible sentence. Let us say thank you to the king and queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella, who were so kind as to expel us from Spain, and as such have done us a great favor. Rabbi Eliyahu Kapsali, one of the scholars of the expulsion generation, wrote similarly. We considered the expulsion to be something bad, but God saw it as something for our good. As he who gathers the dispersed of Israel has gathered us together, for us to be ready for the in gathering of the exiles and the apparent expulsion, straightness, and the gloom from under which the buds of salvation shall sprout. And from that day onwards, the Lord began to gather in the Bashid of these people, so that they should be ready and destined for one place when the Redeemer comes. And the hardships endured by the Jews at those times are the word of the prophet. The end is nigh. Nigh is the end. And the Redeemer is about to come, and it shall not take long. As from the time of the expulsion of Jews from Spain, he began to gather in the banished of Israel from the four corners of the earth. And indeed, after the expulsion of Jews from Spain, many Jews came and settled in the land of Israel. Most of whom lived in Safed, and a minority in Jerusalem and Hebron. Within the space of only a few years, Safed became the most important Jewish center in the land of Israel, and indeed one of the most important for the entire Jewish world. Would we not have expected to find the Jews fulfilling their messianic expectations in the land of Israel, Jerusalem, of all places, the city of the temple, and the end of the day, and the end of days? There is certainly no signal reason for this. And in order to answer this question, we need to conduct a comprehensive historical analysis of the factors contributing to the advantages of Safed over Jerusalem in the 16th century. Safed was a regional government center during the Mamluk era, and later in the early Ottoman period. It was adjacent to the main route between the coastal ports and Damascus. It had a developed textile industry and was home to established communities and Batei Midrash, means Torah study halls, that attract many scholars, and there was also additional reason for this. In this short lecture, we will not be able to discuss all these factors, but we'll only analyze just a touch in one of them, the messianic factor. There were a considerable number of Kabbalah sages among the Jews expelled from Spain who chose to reside in Safed. They were definitely aware of what is written in the book of the Zohar, part 2, page 8b. A pillar of fire will rise between heaven and earth, and shall stand in the land of the Galilee, and all the world shall see that the Messiah shall be revealed in the Galilee. This is not the only statement in the book of the Zohar promising that the revelation of the Messiah in the Galilee. This idea was expelled in various forms by medieval Jewish sages. Medieval Palestinian Midrashic literature contains descriptions of apocalyptical visions of the war of the end of days, during which the Messiah would first reveal himself in the land of the Galilee, and only afterwards would he go to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. Maimonides also wrote that the Redeemer would come to Tiberias in the Lower Galilee, and from there continue to Jerusalem. It is interesting that Maimonides himself is buried in Tiberias, possibly by decree of his own will. The idea developed and mattered in the writings of the 16th century sages of Safed. For example, in an emissary later written by Rabbi Avraham Halevi, a Sephardic Kabbalist who settled in Safed in the 1520, more or less. He responds to one of his students who asked him if it would be correct to anticipate the redemption in Jerusalem. And this is how he replied. The letter was published by Gershom Sholem. And I did not know why you think that the blossoming of the redemption to come will necessarily to be in Jerusalem. But it is known that when the Messiah is revealed in the Galilee, then the main detention will occur. Incidentally, he himself promised his student that the redemption would occur in the year of 1530. It is interesting to note that even the hilly scenery surrounding Safed was attribute a tone. In 1601, the Christian traveler John Sanderson visited Safed and gave the following account. In this city of Safed are all the most learned and devout Jews. Built it is the top of a high mountain and compassed about with many mountains which are both high and steep. But the highest is that adjoining, where I say then they affirm that the Messiah will come. Sanderson was referring to the tall mountain west of Safed, of course, the mountain, namely Mount Meron, on which the tomb of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is located, the man who is traditionally considered to have written the book of the Zohar. The connection between the vision of redemption and the figure of the father of Kabbalistic knowledge is clearly no coincidence. This is how one of the most prominent Kabbalistics in Safed and a key student of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria Ha'ari saw Mount Meron in an incident that occurred in his dream. And so he said, in that year, I dreamed and I was standing on the top of the highest mountain of the west of Safed, at the beginning of the mountain in the middle, with its two large heads are above the village of Meron. And I heard a voice heralding and saying, behold, the Messiah comes. And behold, the Messiah is standing opposite me. And blows the shofar, and thousands and tens of thousands of Jews gather around him. The belief in the coming of the Messiah in the Lower Galilee was not mentioned on many occasions by the sages of that period, but it definitely made its presence felt. There can be no doubt that one of the reasons why Jews expelled from Spain, and especially the Kabbalistic among them, preferred Sefed even to the holy cities of Jerusalem and Hebron, is the belief in the fact that they were living in the generation of redemption, and that when the Messiah won, they would be the first ones to have the honor to welcoming him. In Sefed, the Jews continued to await the following of the doorspot in the ancient synagogue in Milan. 500 years have elapsed since that time, and the doorpost still stands. And in the meantime, it has even been reinforced with concrete. But Jewish belief in the coming of the Messiah faded and continues to be the driving force behind these historic processes. Thank you very much.